everyone, welcome back to Speaking Saturdays. And with that, let's get started with part one. Do you often write down notes? I do all the time, whether it's for work, whether it's for studying, whether it's my grocery lists. I write everything down because my short term memory cannot be trusted. If you tell me something right now, I will probably forget it. And then you'll have to remind me again and again and again. So I put down almost everything that comes to mind. I have this file called a brain dump. And any idea that I have, it goes straight into my brain dump. So yeah, I could not live without, and all of these notes, they're on my phone. So couldn't live without my note apps because I have a lot of note apps on my phone. Do you make a lot of lists on your phone? Yeah, absolutely. I don't really use pen and paper. I just think it's a waste of paper, first of all. I don't think it's very good for the environment, don't you think? And it's just that with a book, you have to, it's so heavy and papers get lost all the time. And where am I going to put a small bit of paper? It makes no sense. Everything is on my phone. I can search for things. I don't have to spend time, effort, energy. And your phone's always with you. So naturally, that's a no-brainer. When do you usually make your notes? Well, like I said, as soon as I have an idea, I'll write it down. And because again, I cannot depend on my short-term memory. It's really bad. My long-term memory is really good, but my short-term memory is awful. So anytime, let's say if my mom tells me that, oh, we need to buy this thing, or oh, you have to do this thing. So I'll just add that to my notes app, or I'll set an alarm or something, depending on, what I need to do. I have my phone, well, almost any phone will do that nowadays, but I've integrated my reminders app, my notes app, my alarms, and my calendar app. So it's really great because anything that I need, it's so easy to find. So yeah, all the time, I'll reach for my notes app probably dozens of times in a single day. It's that frequent. Is it common in your country for people to write notes? I think so, because every time that I go out, I will see a lot of people will have, their phone out and they have a checklist. Some people even carry a book with them, pen and paper, traditional lists. So I've seen that frequently, and not just here, but everywhere that I've lived, I've observed that people do tend to, some people will carry an actual book with them, some people do that because they prefer having, an old-fashioned type of thing. Because they say, oh, phones, technology is so distracting and all that. So some people prefer that. But in general, yes, I've seen many people do this sort of thing. Now we go on to part two. Ooh, that's interesting. Talk about a famous athlete that you know. Talk about who he or she is, how you know him or her, what has he or she achieved that should be achieved and not archived. Archived is something entirely different. That should be achieved. And explain why he or she is famous. Okay, when I think of the word athlete, the first thing that comes to my mind is Michael Phelps. He was, I don't know if he's super active anymore because he had that whole, controversy with his use of marijuana. I think he has ADHD. I could be wrong, but I think so. And that's kind of why I remember, because I have it too. And it was yeah, wow, you can really even when you struggle with something like that, you can really, if you set your mind to it, achieve greatness. So he, for those of you that don't know, he was this Olympic level swimmer, and he's won a lot of awards and stuff like that. In fact, we even have in my city, we have Michael Phelps swimming classes, and it's interesting to me because, I'm afraid of swimming, but at the same time, I would like to try it sometime. So it's kind of this person, and it's also very interesting because if you look at his body, he's kind of he's got really wide. There's something I forgot. I don't know if that was a controversy or something, but either he took a substance or something like that, or maybe he just naturally had something with his body that made it easier for him to swim or something like that. I don't remember very accurately, but yeah, he was all the rage when I was a teenager and young adult. He was in the news all the time. That was a long time ago. That was 10, 15 years, not 15 years ago, 10-ish, 10, 12 years ago. He was everywhere. You couldn't escape. Like he was in the news because he was doing so well, winning all these championships and things like that. And then came the fall, as it always does. He had this whole controversy with marijuana. Of course, it was illegal at the time, so he was punished. And I don't know. I think he kind of just fell off the radar a bit, which kind of makes sense as well, because obviously when you have a controversy like that, you don't want to draw more attention. I'm not sure what kind of punishment he received. He did like get suspended or something, but then he kind of made like a comeback. And so yeah, that's the last that I heard of him was probably years ago. But like when I think of athlete, I think of him because, again, like I said, it's interesting because he was diagnosed, if I'm not wrong, I'm pretty sure I'm right, but if I'm not wrong, he was diagnosed with ADHD. And that's very interesting to me because normally you hear that people who have neurodevelopmental disorders and things like that, they tend to, you hear that, oh, life is tough, or that, it's tough for them to achieve things. But that's not the case. When you look at a man like him, you think, wow, he's achieved so much despite, that kind of an issue. So yeah. Now we'll go on to part 3. Ooh, let's see. What kind of exercise do people in your country like? Oh, yoga is extremely popular. Personally, I feel like if I had to exercise, I would just, do like traditional gym stuff because I find it a lot of fun. But yoga is extremely, extremely popular over here. All kinds of age groups just love yoga. I never understood the craze for yoga. I find it boring. I cannot like sit still and hold a pose and all these. I cannot do that to save my life. So I was never interested in yoga. But you'll find people who are like 15 years old, people who are like 80 years old, all of them just love yoga. So that's like, it's a thing. It's a real big craze here. I think we even have like a yoga day. I don't know when it is because, again, I'm not like a yoga person. But yeah, it's a thing. And it's a lot more popular than traditional like gyms and stuff like that. But also, people here love walking as well, which is, of course, a really good form of exercise. So that's also something that you'll find people doing a lot. Walking, especially walking in the mornings and in the evenings, is also a very popular activity. What characteristics do you think an athlete, that shouldn't be plural, that should be athlete singular, should have? Well, discipline. I don't think you can become a top athlete without discipline. I mean, you have to do the boring stuff every day. You have to be able to stick to a plan. You have to be able to listen to other people who are smarter than you at other, like, for example, let's say you have a nutritionist. Obviously, they know a lot more about nutrition than you do. So you've got to be able to follow advice, follow good advice, of course, when you're given advice, and not be too proud to take recommendations and counsel from other people. So that's one thing. But as I was saying, I think it all comes back to discipline. You have to, it's boring to, count your calories and eat the same thing every day. It's boring to wake up at a fixed time every day. It's boring to, work out for so long and practice so much for so many hours every day. But boring is exactly what builds success. So that is something that you have to deal with, that you have to be comfortable dealing with if you really want to be an athlete. I don't think that without these two traits that you could be a successful athlete. Like of course, like we have people that have been genetically, biologically blessed. Of course, that is also an important part. I mean, you cannot expect to be a basketball player if you're just 5 feet tall. It's not gonna work out. You have to be tall to be a basketball player. But that's not the only thing that really matters, right? I mean, what's the difference between someone who's 5'11" and 6'3"? You could potentially, I mean, the 6'3" person is genetically blessed, but then the 5'11" person might be a better, harder worker, might be more disciplined, and they might eventually beat that other person. So yeah. Why are there so few top athletes? I think it ties back to the same thing that I was talking about. You could, extrapolate this question and you could ask, why are there so few successful businessmen? Why are there so few successful anything? And that's because the kind of dedication that you require to become a top athlete, actor, singer, politician, musician, whatever, a top anything in any field, you really require a one-track mind almost, but that's not a very balanced life. It's a lonely life as well, when you're spending 8 to 12, maybe more hours every day working on whatever it is that you need to work on for an athlete, working out, practicing your skills, your sport, whatever it is. It's exhausting, yes, but it's also lonely because your life is not like the life of any other person who has a normal 9 to 5 job. And that makes it difficult to relate to other people, build relationships, have a normal life because, see, most people want comfort. And to be a top athlete, you have to get rid of the notion that you can just be comfortable because there's no growth in the comfort zone. So that's exactly precisely why we have so few top anything, in fact. What's the best way to become a great athlete? I'm gonna, at the risk of repeating myself, I'm gonna say you need discipline. You need to be able to, forego discomfort, forego comfort, and be okay with discomfort. Because, like I said just a few, seconds ago, there is no growth in the comfort zone. You have to be able to deal with boring things day in, day out. Be okay with maintaining rigid control over all aspects of your life, your diet, your relationships, the way you execute every day. So that is not something that most people, even I couldn't do something like that, to be entirely honest. And without all of these things, how on earth are you ever going to be a successful athlete? I mean, the human body, the kind of dedication that you need to make something of your skills, your body as well, it's a lot, and it's not something that the average person could really ever hope to do. Okay, so that was our test for today. Don't forget to check in next week when we'll have another speaking test just like this one. Or you can check in on Wednesday when I'll be writing an essay. Or you could just watch the tons of videos that I have already. All right then, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.